Hey, what's up, everybody? Dan Tom here, well, from MMA Junkies, where you might know me from, the analyst over there. But thank you for coming to my channel here. Going to give you guys a shout in a second as everybody starts to pile in. I'm going to do my obligatory share and talk as I simultaneously run through the topics. I know I've been running a bit long on these lately. I'm still going to try to keep it for the targeted 30 to 35 minutes as we MMA. Of course, the podcast, the Protect Your Neck podcast at the PYN podcast on all social platforms. I won't spam you. And of course, as per usual, a kind of edited version, not really too edited. I just attach a beginning and end. We'll go up there if you're not joining live, so no worries. But yeah, that's where you get your questions and follow on social media. So without further ado, let's get this party started. All righty. Just ran through what we're going to be doing. I tend to go long with these weekly focuses, so I'm really trying to minimize that down. But at the same time, improve it. I'm going to work on trying to get like a little box here showing some clips. Hopefully that doesn't, get me busted or any strikes for copyright. Make sure to plug the right people and whatnot. And it's just silly. However, just like the crap people gave Mayweather, Khabib was another undefeated fighter, or although Amanda Nunes is not an undefeated fighter, she's a goat, undoubtedly, right? You stand a lot to lose, so it's like you're going to be more picky. If you're smart, you're going to be more picky with who you take to fight. And don't get me wrong, like I love to be that guy on the other end of it, whether it was like Mayweather going, hey, not hating, but like, come on, take this matchup. Oh, he took this matchup at this time, or I'm usually that guy, right? As far as like picking it apart. And on the other hand, I'm also that guy where I'm like, yeah, I like the guy who shows up and fights regardless of it. Go Tony Ferguson. He's the true champ. For doing the weight cut or anything like that. Kind of like I said last week's show, it was more for a mental edge, whether or not you agree with it is regardless. We're talking about Tony Ferguson here, people. But yeah, I'm a Tony Ferguson fan, so in no way. But even me, I'm like pumping the brakes going like, okay, should I really be cheering this on? Like, I don't know what to cheer on and what not to. Vote yourself or inspire confidence, but at the same time, like it's the honest truth. And I think that I'm finding my self-respect more people, or you're just exercising your own perspective there. Again, not trying to get too political or anything. Tell people how to think. That's not my thing here, folks. Just kind of discussing the fallout. I think is correct. But honestly, I think this is going to happen a lot more, as in fighters dropping out of fights, originally scheduled fights not happening. Again, I'm not trying to bump my chest like, oh, I predicted this or predicted that. But remember, I said weeks ago, don't be surprised if you see Dominic Cruz get a title shot at this rate. What happened? It's just kind of one of those things. So we really can't get hung up on old or small narratives in the grand scheme of things. It's probably going to make us go crazy. Speaking of which, hopefully you guys are all holding up well in your own versions of self-quarantine. Everyone's going a little stir crazy. I know I've certainly been having challenges working and getting things done. As you can see, still haven't gotten my hair cut. We still got Brad Pitt and Bobby D behind me. Unfortunately, you guys got to deal with them probably like another week, maybe even two longer, at least for this chat, because it kept getting pushed back. The backdrops. I got literally everything else minus these backdrops. I got the clamps. I got the racks. I got the program, software, camera. Just need the dang backdrop. So apologies, folks, on the empty promises, but we're all dealing and making the best we can. So thank you for sticking with me. But yeah, as we look ahead here, what is a confirmed fight, right? That was the thought I had earlier. And a confirmed fight at this point for me is whatever they have lines on. Betting lines, right? The degenerates out there. I know we went over the early lanes. I'm not going to rehash that, although some line movement, has changed, and there's some dogs that definitely look interesting. Definitely look interesting. I'm seeing a Kazakhstan line listed. Peter Yan minus 230, Marlon Moraes plus 190. I don't disagree with Yan being the favorite at all, but that fight's dangerous. Marlon Moraes is one of the heaviest hitters, regardless whether you're a fan, a big supporter. But that's kind of a crazy. I start to kind of squint at those lines. Kind of like I say, folks, they're not flyweights, but what I'll say, where flyweights and heavyweights kind of cross section, in my opinion, when it comes to the betting perspective of things, is you start seeing over 2 or 2.5, I should say, to one favorite for a heavyweight fight. You kind of got to be skeptical, because no matter how much the line may make sense, no matter how good the favorite may be, it's heavyweight and things can change, as in power. Now, you lose that stereotype and statistic, not taking a shot at the small guys, but it's true when you drop all the way down to flyweight, or in this case, the matchup we're talking about, Jan Moraes, bantamweight. So in that case, yeah. So in that case, yeah, it's not the power, right? Well, so why do you say that, Dan? Well, I say that because it's the opposite. Guys don't get finished as much. There's a lot of scrambles, for example, at flyweight especially. So you're relying on judges who, even if they come from quote unquote boxing, as that stereotype goes, they don't necessarily know how to judge a striking match. Just go look at all those fights that were recently took place in Texas. Not a shot, Texas. Love you. Just saying the commission, right? Now we're expecting those judges or judges like that to judge a grappling fight. So it gets kind of crafty for that reason. But this fight, which is at bantamweight, gets crafty for both that reason, but also, let's be honest, they almost carry heavyweight caveats with them because they're some of the hardest hitters in the division. Jan is up there, but maybe not per se, whereas Moraes maybe a little more up on the power scale as far as bantamweight. A lot of hitters at bantamweight. I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point, folks. But the thing about Peter Yan is, even people like myself who have been a fan and supporter of Peter Yan, he gets hit, folks. He gets hit. You know, you don't in every face, so it's all good. It's all dandy. But not everything's candy in MMA, and you are going to taste those costs sometimes. It's going to be sour, man. You're going to get some sour ones in there, and that's going to happen to Jan. Is it going to happen before he gets the title or after he gets the title? If that's being very presumptive, because it's MMA in these times. But yeah, I mean, in other words, is Peter's going to have to pay the piper sometimes. Dan, why are you rhyming? I'm not trying to, folks. I'm just trying to get a point out here that that's a dangerous line. Jan's my early lean. He should absolutely be the favorite, but that's a dog or pass as far as from a betting perspective, and as far as my initial lean and thoughts are. Again, reserving the right to change. Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier, ESPN plus 33. I love that number 33. We'll get to why in a second here. Looks like only a bookmaker and Bet Online have a line on that fight for Teixeira Smith. Teixeira plus 135 or plus 154, depending on the house, where Smith 165 minus 195. Yeah, man, hopefully Anthony Smith's recovering okay. And not just him, his family. I mean, the trauma from that incident's, nothing to joke about. So hopefully that's all good. And Glover Teixeira, I mean, he's the classiest freaking dude around, man. That being said, I'm surprised the line is not a little wider, but the odds makers never really a fan of Anthony Smith. So I'm a fan of Anthony Smith, but I'm just saying the odds makers aren't. I'm a fan of both guys. So that's kind of stuck to see either one of them lose. And then, yeah, I said Hooker Poirier. Poirier, your favorite, minus 171 or minus 210-ish range. Plus 136 to plus 160-ish range is the comeback on Dan Hooker. Yeah, it's not surprising. I want to look at Dan Hooker's stats against Southpaws will be something I'll be looking at when I break down that fight. And Weidman still scheduled here, at least on the books. He's an underdog to Jack Hermanson, plus 131. Jack Hermanson, minus 165. I'm surprised that line's not a little wider, but you got to imagine, like, the typical inflation that we're all expecting for betting lines. I got to imagine that that's not going to go down, or if they're going to go down as planned, right? So yeah, that's pretty much as far as the futures I'm going to talk about. Again, go to the last live chat or last episode if you listen to the Protecting Neck podcast. As far as my UFC 250 leans or 249 or whatever the heck it's called, right? Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Tony makes weight consequence. This has been kind of talked about to death. And last show was on a Thursday, so he didn't make weight yet, but kind of like, I'll echo what I said last week, was essentially not surprised he was going to make weight. And even though that can't be good for you, Tony's always dancing with the devil in one way or the other. In a sport where you are essentially dancing with the devil anyway. So will it affect it? Should it affect it? Yes, but everything should affect Tony Ferguson. And yet he's still on this crazy win streak. The guy hasn't lost since Obama's first term. Swallow that pill. And yeah, he's one of my favorite fighters to break down for a reason. So Dance, Tony Dance, the last dance on ESPN Plus. I mean, I don't really care. The argument I would like, it would be just as big for me if this wasn't a pandemic. So I could care less about that argument is it only big because of this? Or like, no, the 90s Bulls was a huge thing. Even contrarian, hipster Danton, whatever you want to call me. who doesn't talk about sports, who doesn't know much about sports, especially these days, I was all about the 90s Bulls, follow them from about 1991 because I'll give you a really short version of this. I usually go over these on my UFC or on Bellator, I should say, Hawaii podcast when I'm out there. Staying with my grandmother, who's the last living grandparent I have, and she's a very interesting woman, older woman, Chinese woman, and she breaks all the stereotypes of both women, Asian women, older women, because she's always been into sports, and even when she was successful having her own scenic tours airline business over in Hawaii, she ran illegal card games every weekend. That a bunch of people from family to even politicians and shit would show up, and me and my cousins, it was our job. We'd lay out, shuffle the decks, lay out the tables, chairs, etc. And then in between the poker weekends, she was taking calls, taking bets. So I grew up in her TV room where there'd be two TVs, especially basketball and football. She still really follows NFL. She's big NFL, even at almost 80, making bets and shit. But this time she was taking bets at this point of my childhood, and there was a phone. There was one of those old school typewriters, a notepad, two notepads, one for when she got the call in, take the bets, and another for her notes. And she would break things down and take bets and be her own bookie. And I didn't know anything about that stuff. I had no interest in that stuff, but you want to participate as a young kid. I'm like, well, I like this basketball stuff. I'm just because you're a guy doesn't mean you have to. But yes, I was a young boy, so it was really easy to gravitate towards sports. And I'm like, who's this number 33 character? I'm going to like him, because I didn't know the context. I didn't know the best guy on the court was actually 23, Michael Jordan, right? So their birth, the biggest Scottie Pippen fan, you'll see, because there's not that many of us. Big nose Pip, no tip and Pippen, as they say. No, why am I coming at him so hard? But no, it was crazy. I was seeing a bunch of those things going down, and people were hating on Scottie, and I'm like, no, The Last Dance was actually kind of giving some his due that I didn't realize. Oh, maybe he was no tip and Pippen because he wasn't making that much money. But it's kind of hard to say, right? When you're like, wow, he was underpaid. He was X amount, lowest guy paid, and then you still see $1 million there for someone covering. Never competed at a pro level, but just kind of been around that and martial arts in general my whole life, and seeing the peanuts that martial artists, fighters have made. I'm like, okay, well, I get it, sympathetic, because I'm a fan of the dude, and he never got his due, but I'm also like, these guys are all getting millions of dollars. But no, that was really touching. I didn't realize Scottie was taking care of two paralyzed paraplegic members of his family. I always knew that they called it equipment manager, but he was essentially a ball boy. I mean, to walk on as a ball boy, as a sophomore in Arkansas. I mean, not that Arkansas was super high competition, but just college ball in general. I mean, to do that was just insane. And then he becomes a top 50 shoe and one of the most underrated players ever. I had this thing, I'll probably share it later, but it was kind of in finals or in playoffs, and it was stats. And Scottie and Jordan either break even, or Scottie, I think, outdoes them in a lot of categories, which is true, whether we're talking playoffs, preseason, postseason, in-season, defense. I think he had 40 break later, by not just hitting 7, but 7 after, what was it, 90 longer distance. So even offensive records, Scottie was breaking. And people get so pissed, and I'm not a hater by any means, but of course, Dan Tom always has a love for the underdog. Contrarian, but for a reason. Sure, you can levy all that on me, but I'm not a Jordan hater, believe me. But people just hate when you say that. If you put the stats up close and you had no context for who Michael Jordan was, you may still say that Jordan is the better player than Pippen, but you'd be like, wow, these guys are pretty close. And people fucking go bananas. They go, what? Because they have, it's all the Jordan and all the intangible and all years and pounding, and justly so. I'm not hating, but if you actually just look at the stats, and I know I'm not a stat guy when it comes to fighting, because stats are really garbage when it comes to fighting for the most part. I mean, they're not garbage, but they don't say a lot. Whereas the sample sizes, the game, the structure, etc., it's more built in. It's a little more tangible, a lot more tangible in my opinion, actually, when you talk about sports like basketball. But yeah, if you look at just the stats, dude, Scottie was right up there, man. Guard, and he kind of retained all those skills. But there were games where he was playing center and whatnot, is because they didn't really have any good big men, you know. So Scottie was having to go to those Scottie was having to go to those positions a lot. So it's like it's two ways you can look at it. It's like there's the argument like that Shaq said he brought up, I believe, in a interview with Ariel Helwani. I was supposed to touch on it last week. I didn't get a chance to, but like he brought up like, okay, I think the Lakers are going to be that early 2000s team will beat the 90s Bulls, and that's fine. That's a fine argument to have. I'm not hating on anybody who takes either side of the argument, and I'm not a Lakers hater either. In fact, I like the classic Lakers, and my favorite Lakers team is the Lakers team that like not even like a lot of not talking about like the people who are actually from California, like hardcore Lakers fans. Y'all are OGs. Y'all know I love you. But I'm talking about all the fake Lakers fans because there's so many of them here. Like being from Las Vegas or not even so much Hawaii, I can't weigh in on because I didn't grow up there as much. But like you grew up in a state that doesn't. But yeah, like either way, I'm not hating that argument. Although it's kind of two perspectives. Like you can look at it like, oh, they didn't beat anybody with a big man, but like, well, they didn't have much of a big man team either. And sure, that comes into play if we're comparing it against Shaq's team, right? Because you look at the Orlando Magic. I mean, they were one of the, one of the thorns in Chicago, even, from Chicago's off seasons to their on. Oh man, that guy could make some plays. He had some sweet shoes, by the way. We were talking in some shoe talks, by the way. Jordan 11s were my favorite, but you bet your ass your boy here owned a pair of trying to play basketball. It was a funny sight to see, folks. It was a funny sight to see, but basketball was like my life growing up. You got to understand. And yeah, so of course, just like Shaq was biased, I'm going to be biased and I'm going to say the Bulls would have won, right? But it was true because the Bulls was really like a last era of teams. And this is something that I'm pretty proud of. There are two takes when I was ignorant and shouldn't have known any better. I shouldn't have been right about these takes, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because I'm fucking like special in the head or what, but a young Dan Tom nailed these two things. And one was even in the early 90s when I'm like fucking 8 to 10 years old, I'm looking at the newspapers going, do celebrities love each other or do they just get married and then divorce after they like stop having a couple movies for a while? Like, look at Demi Moore. She does a shakeup, but now look, she's getting the G.I. Jane. She's getting and I was already kind of putting that formula together. And the other one was the more important, although not really important in sports. There's more important things in sports. The other one was basketball and where it was going, kind of pro sports. Don't get me wrong, we had some really awesome commercials around the mid to late 90s time. You remember Grant Hill kind of having his Sprite deals, and Sprite started doing like awesome basketball commercials, like what's the motivation, right? Like that was a classic one. Of course, McDonald's was getting when the Olympics were happening, and they had some really good ones where they gave Scottie some good airtime for some chicken McNugget commercials, and as you can tell, Dan Tom made some chicken McNuggets in his day. So I was all about these commercials, but at the same time, even as a kid, I'm like, this corporate stuff is very dangerous. Because again, what makes the Bulls really cool or interesting is that it was an era where teams were still teams. You still have to play as a team. It wasn't like, who can, trade and buy. Where's LeBron going to this season? Like it was before this went fucking all out, right? And I really got worried it was going to bleed in, that money was going to bleed in, because what was frustrating as being a Pippen fan was that he didn't really get a lot of attention, right? Of course, you're going to be one of the most underrated players ever if you're playing right next to one of the best players ever, if not the best, right? That's going to be natural. I get that. That's cool, I guess. But like what was kind of frustrating was that like you kind of saw that effect when you have a superstar, so to speak, on the team and what that does. And, Bill Wennington, Luke Longley, Steve Kerr, I got love for all these guys. Maybe not Luke Longley, man. I still hold it against them. We could have beat the Magic, man. The dunk was right there and he turns and he banks it off. Come on, Luke. What were you thinking, dude? But regardless, I got love for all these guys. And, but like, they weren't the best. They weren't the best players by any means. Like they really had to step up, overperform, and have to kind of play in two and in lockstep with not just Phil Jackson, but Scottie Pippen. And that kind of, it sucks. It hurts to see because it was very divisive. It really set people in different ways when Scottie sat out elective and took that elective surgery that they're currently covering. But you also kind of saw, like, kind of prove the point, like, dude, Scottie's more of a glue than just, the rock star scoring points. Like there's a guy quietly doing things, if you know basketball, a utility player, the players that don't get any credit, and that was Scottie Pippen. So I'm locked in for this last dance. Of course, I'm going to say that the 90s Bulls would beat the Lakers because, you got to – okay, if we're dealing with mobbed up refs, then that's another thing too, because we want to talk about money bleeding in the league, about 2001, 2002 is when I stopped watching, not because I was a Lakers hater, but because the refs were, I mean, the refs already babied Shaq as it is. And that's what I hate. You know, the commentators building up, he's so big, he's so strong. And then a fly lands on Shaq. Foul, foul, foul. Like, fucking protecting the guy. It was the most frustrating thing. And that was going on way back in the Magic. But what happens in LA is you've got mobbed up refs. And I remember, you know, oh, you're just a sour fan, Dan, at the time. I was like, what do you mean? Like Kobe Bryant literally like knife hand chopped Rasheed Wallace in the throat. And not only does Kobe not get the call, Rasheed gets the call. Not only does Rasheed get the call, they call him for a flagrant because you know Rasheed Wallace's fucking temper. You give him one bad call, especially like a flagrant foul call that he actually didn't deserve. Rasheed's going fucking crazy. By the way, Rasheed Wallace might make it on my like guys like Charles Oakley, like NBAers who could have been MMAers. Like that was yeah, like so like but you know, I looked like a sour fan at the time, and then you know you go back. Of course, it wasn't until 2005, and they're just Tim Donaghy was the only one. Like it's fucking Vietnam May lie. We're pinning it on one guy. Oh, it was only one guy. It was only one ref. You hear about these fucking refs, like what they get paid almost like upwards of $10,000 to $15,000 or something per game. You don't think it's in their interest to maybe extend the series? And of all games, of all structures, the ref whistle in basketball, and basketball being such a momentum game. Arguably almost as much as fighting, right? Except you have the ability to constantly break momentum. You're controlling overs and unders. You got money. I mean, holy crap, if you are going to rig something and be a ref, and basketball is the easiest one to do it, whether or not you want to believe that, folks. I'm not trying to spread my tinfoil hat theory, but that was a really frustrating I don't know. I like Kobe, by the way. I'm not saying that because the guy's dead. Like I never hated Kobe, by the way. I just didn't like Shaq, which I'll explain in a second. I didn't like Rick Fox because he just seemed like he was like, I'm cool, I date models. And then what do you do on the court aside from like start a fight with like Scottie Pippen? You know, big guy Hawaii still got Pippen love. You still got the jacket? Yeah, I do. I do, Uncle Paul. I do. Mike Krause says, BB corrupt as hell. Yeah. Boy, I'm getting on a tangent here, guys. Thank you for we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna get to front headlock chokes. Probably gonna go to 45 minutes today, and then we'll wrap up. But I'll just finish this on the Shaq story. Why I'm always taking shots at Shaq is not just because, like, again, being hipster because of the world. I'm not hating. It's totally cool, like the Shaqs of the world, but like people, whether you're like talented and a rock star like Jordan, and he worked fucking his ass off to get it, folks. So I'm not trying to even in any way demean any of these people who are accomplishers, achievers, who I respect for that reason. Or a Shaq, who you're not just an athlete, you're a star athlete. You're not just rich, you're really rich, and you're not just a star athlete who's rich. You're like you're always the biggest from whoever. And I'm going to piss a lot of people off because I have a lot of people that I respect that are Shaq fans. So, you guys, I'm not coming at you. It's all good. Player like okay, guy that probably has very little diversity from the commentators, the refs, you know, the athletic programmings, the institutions coming up, like kind of paving the way for this guy. Like. It probably took him a while to learn some real adversity. Like I'm sure he has a great series that I do want to check out. But he was saying something interesting in the interview with Ariel, where he's like, it's so weird to have a guy, you know, that can, you know, pick me up or be, you know, match me in size. I'm always the biggest guy and this and that. And that's great. So good on Shaq if he's doing martial arts to get humbled. And perhaps he's a better person. But you fast forward again back to Hawaii now. This is one of my uncle's ex-wives. No reason. It's essentially there's people who are like, how do you call them? They're like, they're the people who take care of celebrities when they come into a certain state or a country or whatever, and they make sure everything's taken care of. They're pretty much by their side and yada, yada. Not their assistant, but like, you know, they work with their assistant. They work with the celebrity. That was her job. And she worked with the players and the board. Very little African-American and, you know, Hispanic as far as, you know, if we're going to stereotype, like it's hard to find a fucking burrito shop in Hawaii. Right. But yeah, like, so anyways, so it's like a group of kids. I think there's only like one black kid, right? And I guess Shaq just signs, he puts up a fit. He wasn't even doing anything. He was in the middle of eating. They weren't pressed for time. She made the schedule. She knew. And he was like, but just from being overrated on the court, probably not being checked as a human being and not having the healthiest ego to like, and you hear stories like that. Like I've never been a Shaq fan, and that's why I'm not hating you if you are, but that's why I always take shots at the guy. And I will never be famous. This lowly channel and a little bit of followers about all I have. But I used to joke when I was a kid, I'm like, if I ever become famous, and like if it's like a movie release, and they'll be like, Dan, Tom, tell us about the movie. I'm like, one second. There's something that I know it's the year's 2030. Something I've been holding on since 97. Scottie, you're the best. Shaq, you suck. So there, I had to do that. But I know that was immature. But literally, this last dance, it's really bringing out the kid in me. As you can tell, I'm excited. I've been talking way too long. We're going to push on. Mike Krause, does Tony win? I got money on Justin. Was that smart? Dude, from a betting perspective, like I was talking about at the top of this show, believe me, I didn't just rant about basketball the whole time, folks. If you're just tuning in now, like I said at the top of the show, there's looking at things from a betting perspective, Mike. And from a betting perspective, that fight is dog or pass. And I'm the biggest Tony fan. I felt like it was dog or pass. Maybe I could be picking Justin, but no, Tony should be favored. I'm probably going to pick Tony. Do the analysis. You know, I feel a little bit better about my Tony pick. Of course, as we know, fight didn't happen, right? Now Justin is, we're seeing that he's having some good training partners. And now he's getting more notice, right? The first one was shorter notice. Tony was the one with a longer notice. Now, a little more even playing field. So that plus the fact that Justin has that plus number next to his name, Mike, that's not a bad bet. But yeah, man, at the same time, don't run to the bank off me. I'm not an authority. I bet like a 9-year-old with an allowance. Like I bet like the kid you just heard talking about basketball, like that came out of me. Like that's the same person that bets. So don't listen to me, but the educated perspective, I will give you, or educated opinion, as educated of opinion as I can give you. That is it. Front headlock threats. I'm just going to bring up two fights as per usual. I'm going to eventually do these and bring these clips on here, but I'm going to go ahead and post these on my Twitter if you want the visual at Dan Tom MMA before we get out of here. But that is the weekly focus, is front headlock threats. And originally I started looking at front headlock threats like, I'm actually getting more Tony questions here, which is awesome. And Tony's going to be mentioned here in a second. So I'm going to tie that in. Designated member. But I was looking at stuff like Charles Oliveira versus Hatsuya Aoki, and I love that. I love that choke. He kind of sits through it as the anaconda grip instead of rolling through. He just sits forward, right? But I'm like, okay, we could go for days as far as finish, using them to finish. And I was thinking about our last conversation, which was our last focus, which was about leg locks. And one of the points that I bring up is that it's not about even getting the leg lock a lot of times. It's what the leg lock gives you. It's creating that scramble to get off your front headlock chokes. Because sometimes just the threat of a front headlock alone can open up a lot of things. There's the classic one. A lot of wrestlers, like, or jiu-jitsu players who like to take the back will like, where you snap someone down, you shuck them forward, and you go to the back, because when you shuck somebody forward, if you do it right, especially if you're getting a nice chin strap, whatever grip you prefer, I'm not going to lecture you on it. The idea is you want to shuck someone forward so much that their weight has to post on the mat. What are their hands not doing? Not protecting their neck. What are their hands not doing? They're not shifting out and getting hooks. They're not defending hooks. These are your opportunities kind of to advance. So front headlock threats are beautiful because you don't even have to go for the choke to open things up. Now, we just mentioned Tony Ferguson. Now, he does use front headlock threats to open up other chokes. This was going to be on a points of interest article that was going to be released. And unfortunately, COVID-19 stuff happened, yada, yada, is one of the things that didn't make it out. So I want to at least post this clip to you, because in the Lando Venata fight, you see it in a couple of other fights, but the Lando Venata fight, he uses a front headlock threat to get a front headlock. It's not about pulling off crazy moves, folks. It's not about, oh, I know this crazy like submission from the rubber guard, and I'm not coming at the rubber guard. No, I made a comment about it, made it sound like it not coming at my 10th planet brothers and sisters. But I'm just saying, that's not how I measure, like, what's a good grappler. Like, what's a good grappler is someone who knows that if I make weight go this way, they're going to have to do this. And if they do this, I get that. And they're playing 3 steps ahead. That's a fucking good grappler in my head. Those are the people that you got to watch out for. And Tony knows that if I go for the guillotine, I'm probably not going to get the guillotine. But what will happen if I go for the guillotine? Well, what will happen is the same reason why you probably won't get it, is because the person's going to fight hands. That's your first instinct. Oh, get off my neck. So the great thing about when someone grapples with you, is to say, and when we would do grappling in karate, we actually did some grappling, and had some decent grappling. A lot of it misinformed, neither here nor there. But the point was, don't be afraid. Was teach us not to be afraid when we get in a grappling exchange. So much of us were strikers, right? That's the natural art. But the principle, aside from, learning how to grapple, relaxing, breathing, all the important shit, but another kind of great principle is, the good thing about grappling or someone putting their hands on you is you know where their hands are now. Now we don't got to worry about it. It's not a surprise. Are they going to punch me up high? Are they going to dive down low? No, we know where their hands are. By the same token, you can put your hands on somebody, like go for a guillotine choke, And now we can kind of pretty much guide where their hands are going to be right here. And when Lando Venata goes here, it opens up space between the tricep, the lat, for Tony's Darsing arm to come through and opens it up. Now, he does it standing. It's pretty crazy. So here's what I want you to do, grapplers. Even though a lot of us can't grapple right now, once things return, you'll probably be on the mats before my ass with the things I'm dealing with. So try this, especially if you're someone who gets to mount a lot, right? If you get to mount a lot, maybe you're not flexible to be doing those mounted triangles. You don't want to give up position for it. Totally cool. You like the guillotine? So do I, right? But from the mount, it's really obvious. I mean, unless somebody's like bucking like a fish out of water and you're timing it, you're catching it, it's really hard to catch on anybody decent, much less anybody good. So using Tony's principle, I want you to try one of my favorite Darce setups. When you're in the mount, I want you to go for that guillotine. Again, this is technically still kind of a front headlock threat in a way. You're threatening the neck. Okay, this is more of a threat to the neck if we're being technical, obviously. It's going to make them fight hands. They're in the mount. They're on their back. They're going to fight hands. As you do that, you kind of slide off the top. You still keep a knee and ankle to keep weight on them as you do. But what that does is it probably confuses them because their first priority is defend the choke. But now they're like, wait a minute, is this guy giving me a way out? Do I have a way out, or is this guy giving me a way out? And chances are, even if they're smart, they're probably not going to be thinking about that or have that time because they're, again, worried about the choke. And you're just pretty much going off to the side in order to get your Darsing angle because they are giving you an opening by fighting hands. And there you can slide your Darce hand in as you keep your choking hand tight. You slide your Darce hand in and you're in on it. So those of you grapplers, if you're grappling around, try that trick. I love it. I think it's really high percentage because if it doesn't work, you stay on top. But the front headlocks are great for that. Let me see. Tony Ferguson. Tony oftentimes designated member. Tony oftentimes gets hurt early. Very bad versus Justin. Yes. One of the things I say in my breakdown though is when Tony gets hurt, it's usually because he's being caught mid-kick and people are crashing or countering him when he's kicking. Justin hurts a lot of people with his fist. So to say that Justin can't hurt Tony is stupid. In fact, even if you're like me and you're picking Tony and you're a Tony supporter, you'd be silly to think he's not getting out of this one without having to recover from getting hurt first. So by that nature alone, you are not crazy by saying that. However, when Justin does the hurting, not that he doesn't know how to counter or check kicks. In fact, Justin's gotten better with his checking and his footwork and feinting in particular to help draw these things out. But when Justin's hurting people, they're usually almost 99 to 95% of the time, they're not kicking. They're not throwing a kick. Does that mean Justin can't counter? Does that mean Justin can't crash counter? Does that mean Justin can't hurt him? Obviously not. But that was a pretty strong statistic that swayed me in the favor that maybe Tony can navigate this turbulence field. Designated member also says, Tony is cursed by the gods. Awesome run. Yet somehow destined to never get a proper title shot. I mean, it is one of the most criminal things, which again, a guy who loves the underdog, who just rants about Scottie Pippen for 12 minutes and kills what's left of his audience. I love the underdog. I love the guys who don't, get that unheralded attention. The guys that do everything. Utility player. Pippen's a utility player. Ferguson is a utility fighter. And that's just the truth too. You fight going forward, going backwards, although he seldom takes a back step, but he can fight educated off that jab. Both stances, offensive wrestling, scrambling, fighting off the back, fighting crazy. Ferguson does it all. So thank you for those. BJ Penn versus Joey Gilbert is another one back at UFC 31. What I like about it is it's crazy, right? Like BJ Penn, he's this jiu-jitsu prodigy. He has to make his debut in the UFC, and they're expecting him to come in and submit guys, and it's a ground game that gets this fight won. Don't get me wrong, folks, but it's crazy. He starts knocking everybody out to start things off. His first fight, though, against Joey Gilbert, a guy who was a much better wrestler. I believe NCAA. I don't know if he was Division I, Division II, but he was a much better credentialed wrestler than BJ Penn, and I believe he trained with like the Carlson Gracie lineage or whatever, right? I think Clay Guida, he would train and go on to train Clay Guida, etc. BJ Penn debuts against him, and it's great because Gilbert shoots and BJ goes to the guillotine, as most jiu-jitsu guys or most people would do against a wrestler, except a mistake that people are still doing today, going back at UFC 231, almost 20 years ago. BJ Penn's doing it the right way, which is why he got the nickname of the Prodigy. And obviously, yes, while have the mighty has fallen. I know I got to mention that, but we're talking about good times here, folks, for a second. Bear with me. And he uses the the guillotine as a threat. Again, front headlock threat. He doesn't drop down, but he chokes up on the guillotine just enough to get Gilbert to respect it. And as soon as he respects it, instead of going in through the Darsing arm through that, trap or tricep lat pathway, he just uses that great grip, which is the tricep. BJ does, keeps his choking arm, keeps him looking at the birdie, keeps him looking at the threat, grabs the back of the tricep, scoots around to his back, reverses the position off the back into the cage, and then takes the wrestler down and goes into the Navy ride variation that Khabib hits on everybody, of course. The guy who me and many think is the greatest lightweight of all time still as far as accolades and importance to the division. That dude was doing that shit his first fucking fight almost 20 years ago. Man, it's insane. So I'm going to post a clip of that. It's just a really cool, small sequence. I posted Chael Sonnen versus Tim McKenzie the other day when everyone was talking about Fight Island, just because I wanted to show that Bodog fight scene. And that's a really cool one as far as like high, low that also involves the front headlock. So in other words, this ties in what we were talking about last week with Frank Shamrock going up high for a triangle, down low for a leg lock. Whether you're fighting from the guard or whether you're a wrestler wrestling offensively. So whether you're going for submissions as a jiu-jitsu guy from your guard or whether you're a wrestler on your feet attacking offensively, the high, low principle is so important and effective. You see Chael use that beautifully here. I think he goes for a shot. Tim McKenzie overly sprawls. I don't know if Chael meant to draw that out of him. Either way, he parlays it well by going to the front headlock threat, gets him worried about there, hits his patented inside trip going low, but he's still looking onto the birdie and holding onto the birdie. So now he's back up high, sinking in his Darce choke, right? It's a beautiful, quick one there. And the last one, I'll post a clip, this one too. Again, really small, nothing crazy here, guys. But DC versus Derek Lewis at UFC 231, like 315 around 2 mark. DC is like dragging him down and tiring the big guy, right? Putting front headlock threats are great too, because even if you don't get anything, you're making the guy work, right? So there's DC, he's making Derek Lewis work. He knows Derek Lewis also took it on short notice, is better cardio than him, right? He's banking on it at least. So he's weighing him down, and we see him kind of snapping him down and making, like I said, making Derek Lewis put that weight forward. And not that DC isn't agile enough to scoot around to the back or anything and start turtle riding him, side riding him, and punching him. He does a really beautiful move where Derek Lewis is in his patented tripod, right? And he's daring you to take the back, because Derek Lewis makes his money when guys try to take his back. He gets in the tripod position, making his puts the ass in the air, makes that steep slope. So if you take the back, it looks open, but you fall forward. DC ain't going to play that game. Instead, he holds onto the front headlock. He sees the ankle down there, and he picks that ankle and picks him on his back and gets the finish soon after. It's just a beautiful, beautiful transition, and it kind of shows that you don't have to necessarily go for a front headlock choke to make hay from it. And some of the best grapplers and best fighters tend to know and exercise this. So I'll post those at Dan Tom MMA. Thank you guys for sitting through. Apologies for the big Scottie Pippen rant. That was in the cellar waiting to get out. A lot of old feelings there, but yeah, man, I love this. I'm in ESPN. You guys got me with this Last Dance thing. I'm gonna follow it through. I'll see you guys soon. We're gonna be doing top 5 Bellator fights with James Lynch. Again, not officially announcing it tomorrow, but one of the benefits of tuning in here, you guys are gonna get a sneak peek of that. Doing a fun wrestling one with Ed Gallo the following week. And I don't think we get fights next week, so you're probably stuck with me for another one of these installments. And then when we do get fights again, assuming everything goes as planned, May 9th, and hopefully safety, of course, safety first, then teamwork. Pineapple Express there. And yeah, I'll see you guys. We'll be doing breakdown shows every Thursday, and those will be thrown up here, but they won't be in this format. They'll be back to the top-notch audio quality, and hopefully bringing you guys better quality in general. Thanks for everything, guys. Thank you guys for checking out top 5 WEC fights. Got a lot of kind words on that one. Of course, had Brad Taschuk from the MMA Analysis podcast, another great podcast to check out. Had him on. That was a lot of fun. And just thank you guys for following this channel. I try not to spam your feeds, but the fact that you guys respond, follow, interact, it really means the world. Hope you're all staying safe. And always, until next time, protect your neck.